Hey guys, so what I want to do in this video is kind of take you guys a step further in the Loomis method. We've already gone over doing the basic template structure for the head and dividing it into the three measurements. The second video, we started to add features to the face and added some shading to the face. So in this video, what I want to show you guys is going through all the way from start to finish and getting to a finished piece. So going beyond making a sketch, going beyond making a drawing based on the Loomis method, and going to making what would be considered an artwork. So I'm gonna build this here in front of you, and I'll just chime in occasionally and kind of let you know what I'm doing. So here to start out, I'm using a picture, and in this picture, the person's face is turned to the side. So you can see that I've made that that vertical line that denotes the middle of the nose and the middle of the chin and between the eyes, right? I've offset that to the side a little bit. So that's kind of where you can use Loomis to start moving the head around. It doesn't always have to be a straight on shot. So you'll notice in this one that I'm being a little less technical. This is more how I would naturally draw if I'm using the Loomis method. I don't always use it, but if I do, I usually don't do like all the technical pieces of Loomis. Like I don't measure the width of the nose and then base the eyeballs off the width of the nose. I'm just kind of eyeballing that right now as I work on the eyes and the nose. And that just feels more intuitive to me. It might help to be more technical in your approach to Loomis at the start, and then kind of find what parts of the Loomis method help you, what parts work for you. Maybe it's just getting the spacing of the eyes right that really matters, and so maybe that's what you focus on with Loomis, or maybe it's that you always like make the nose too long, and so maybe using Loomis to identify where the nose is in relation to the eyes and mouth. Maybe that's what you should focus on, or maybe it's the being able to turn the head piece. So you don't have to use every technical part of the Loomis method, right, for it to help you draw. Find what works for you. There's no one way to draw. There's no right way to draw. Ultimately, what matters is that you are drawing, that you're practicing, and also that you're trying out some different techniques, trying out some different styles, seeing what helps you grow as an artist. So you'll notice in this video that I'm a little looser with my approach. I don't really measure everything out typically when I draw. I start to eyeball it and kind of go for it. So that's what you'll see mostly in here is just me kind of stepping back, looking, and getting an idea for where things go, trying things out, and then moving things around. Also, early on, I like to start to establish shadows. Really, a lot of times I'll even establish my shadows before I establish the features. I went ahead and did features because this is a Loomis method video. But a lot of times I like to start with value keying. And so that's kind of getting in all those darkest shadows first, finding the shape of those darkest shadows, and then going to a little bit lighter values or lighter shadows on the face, and then ending with your highlights. Also, what you'll see in this video is I'm working on pastel paper, and I'm working with vine charcoal. And so pastel paper has a lot of texture to it. Vine charcoal is a very soft substance. So right now, the shadows you're seeing me put down, the values you're seeing me put down, the lines aren't very sharp. And that's just part of using these materials. They're gonna look very soft. What I will do as I go through here and start to refine things is I'll start to blend some of these shadows, and you'll see that these shadows start to look a lot more even and start to look a lot more attractive to the eye as you start to blend them with a blending stump or with your finger or however you want to kind of feather these shadows out. So right now, early on in your drawing, it's going to look a little bit scratchy, a little bit sketchy. But by the end of this, you'll see that it looks like a very nice quality of application as far as the shadows. You also notice that I'm continuing to hold pretty far back on my piece of vine charcoal and to draw with a side hand approach. I talked about that in an earlier video as far as drawing with charcoal, and that just helps to keep the charcoal from getting dull fast because charcoal is very soft. So that side hand approach is also going to give you kind of freer, looser lines, which is just really a stylistic choice. As much as anything, I do like kind of a loose quality to portraits, especially. So that's why I hold that so far back. If you wanted this portrait to look really tight and really precise, then you might want to use a grip that's midway up the line charcoal instead of at the back, or even up towards the tip if you wanted really sharp lines. Also, if you wanted it to look really sharp and precise, I would not use the pastel paper. I would use some drawing paper or some Bristol board or something like that. And that's going to give you a lot smoother surface to work on, which will help to give you really clean lines. I'm not worried about clean lines. I kind of like the smudgy quality. So just an explanation of that for you. All I'm doing here is continuing to develop these shadows. There's some shadows that I still need to add, like on the side of the nose here. Some of these shadows also need to get a good bit darker, right? So I'm starting, right, I'm working light at first until I feel like it's right, and then that's when I'm willing to go in and darken things. What you'll see eventually happen is on the left-hand side of this portrait, this side that I'm adding shadow to now, eventually that eye is just about going to disappear in these shadows. That's how dark those shadows are. I'm just kind of developing those slowly. That's how I would encourage you guys to work until you get kind of more comfortable with working with value and with portraiture. Working light until you feel confident to commit to going darker, and then go ahead and go darker. Otherwise, as you get more comfortable, a lot of times it can help your drawing come together more quickly if you identify those darkest areas first and then just start there as far as adding your darkest values and the shape of those darkest values. But early on, when you're learning it, it does help to work light early and then to develop those darks slowly. Also, I've obviously sped up this video just for the sake of not making a super long video and not asking you guys to watch me draw this full portrait from start to finish in real time. So this video is going to end up being a little over 20 minutes, but in real time, it also doesn't actually take that long. This portrait, with the video, just like the raw video footage, it's about an hour and a half of me working on this portrait. And even that, it's on a Wednesday while I'm here at school, and like part of that time I'm like distracted talking to coworkers or have students coming in to pick up supplies. And so I've got an hour and a half of video, and I'm not even fully working on it that total hour and a half. So an hour and a half is really not that big a time commitment to create a work of art from start to finish. So that's really kind of part of the usefulness of Loomis is it helps you to just get started so fast, and then you can spend time on detail and on touching up, but it helps to just lay out the face and to get you going really quickly, more so than having to struggle with the placement of features and the proportions of features. At this point, I feel like I've got a pretty good foundation. And so what you'll see me start doing is just kind of adding some background and adding some stylistic elements. And so that's something you want to start doing as you start nearing completion of your artwork, right? Is to make it your own. And so I mentioned earlier that I kind of like this a little bit smudgy quality. I like a little bit of a chaotic quality in the background. So you'll see I've got some sharp lines and then I'll smudge them. In the hair, I'll put down some really dark value and then I'll kind of erase some of it out with my finger. And what I'm doing is just looking for some really expressive marks throughout this portrait as I did it closer to completion, because at this point I'm starting to feel like it's getting near completion, although there are some things that I'll continue to change, but I can already start to kind of see where I want it to go. So I'm providing it with some context and with a setting. What I'm doing there is just adding some expressive marks. So even at this point in time, you can already see right where this has come a long way from simply being a circle with a couple lines through it, right, and then adding a jawbone, right, and a line down through the middle to indicate where the nose is going to be. This is developing pretty quickly. In real time, this has probably been less than an hour's worth of drawing. So here I do a little something off camera. I just forget to record, but I do bump her left nostril up a little bit and in, right? And so I'm using this fine charcoal. It's super easy to erase. So just kind of erase the bottom of it and add a little bit more to the top. And so I bumped her nostril up. It felt too close to the lips. And now going back in, I'm going to kind of start to add some details and start to accentuate some highlights, start to correct some of the values in the lips. I feel like the lips are a little too dark. So I'm pulling some of the charcoal back off of the lips. So at this point, you could more or less call this a finished piece if you wanted to. There is like a certain quality and a certain charm to a piece that has some elements of it that have a more unfinished appearance. But I decided to keep taking it further. But at this point, you could already just say, I want to keep some of this looseness, some of this unfinished appearance, and I want to use that as kind of part of the style of this piece. So that's something that you can always keep in mind, is kind of adding your own thing to it, making it your own. Part of that can be right looseness or tightness, complete, incomplete. You don't want a piece that just looks incomplete totally, but you might want some elements that look incomplete. And this piece could be successful if I left it alone at this point, but I do decide not to, that I want to develop it further. You'll see what I'm starting to do here is to kind of redefine that eye. I don't want it to be completely lost in the shadow. And really what I do more than anything is I go and erase some of the charcoal out. So instead of drawing the eye darker, instead I go and find the highlights in the eye and erase those out instead, to kind of give the impression of the eye rather than to try to redraw it completely. So typically you want this to be finishing touches, and that's going to be your highlights. So that's what I'm doing now. I've gone back in with some white charcoal, or you could use something like white colored pencil or something to really accentuate the absolute lightest parts of the picture. And so what I really notice on her is the highlights. She's got one dominant highlight in each eye, and so I decided to accentuate those. She's also got a pretty strong highlight on her cheek, right on top of the cheekbone beside her left eye. So one of the most important things in drawing is looking, right? You should probably be spending more time looking than actually drawing. And so as I'm spending more time looking at this picture as I'm drawing a portrait, one of the things I'm noticing is that there's actually these tiny highlights along the edge of the top lip and kind of fading over into the cheek from there. Also along the bottom eyelid, kind of fading over to the edge, and then on the bottom lip as well. And so I'm just kind of touching up those little details. You probably wouldn't even notice those unless you were right on top of the picture. From there, really, I'll just go in and use some of this charcoal pigment powder to make this finished piece. And I'll just show you a picture of the finished piece. I didn't video it all the way through that because that's a decision I made later on. So So this is finished for purposes of this video, and this is actually the finished product.